In this video, we're going to make a Christmas gift idea. So it's going to be a coaster with some engraving inside it. You can fill the recess with some epoxy and make a nice Christmas gift. So if you're quick, you can probably still get it done for Christmas. Just before we start, this is my version of FreeCAD. This is the revision number. It's the version that I've been using for quite a while. Seems pretty stable. I like it. But just in case you're missing some of the things that I do, that if you don't have those buttons, it's check that you're using the same version of FreeCAD that I am. So let's get started. A couple of things I want to let you know. You can see the glow around my mouse now. That's so you can see my mouse pointer better. But also if I click left, you'll see that the little guy pops up with a click left. If I click right, you'll see he pops up with a click right. And down here, you can see if I type characters, you're going to see them on the screen there. They will disappear after a while, but you'll see them there for a while. So that'll let you know what I'm typing and what I'm clicking. And so you should be able to follow along fairly easily. Now, first things first, I'm going to open a new file. And I use my macro again for that. So I just click here. That'll fire off my macro. What that macro does, and it's available to you if you want it. It basically just starts a new part, new body, opens a sketch, and does that sketch on the XY plane. So what we're going to do, this coaster is going to be very simple. It's going to be a circular coaster. So we're just going to pop it on center there. It's going to actually be 100 millimeters in diameter. One thing I want to point out, when I do these constraints, if I'm constraining a diameter, I use the diameter one rather than the radius. That way I do no mental math. So if I do that and I want it to be 100, I'm just going to say OK. And now my guy is 100 millimeters in diameter. I'm going to close that. I'm going to create a pad. And my coasters are going to be 15 millimeters thick. I hit that button just to show you where it is. And there it is. Basically looks like a hockey puck. Now, one thing I'm going to do, and just thinking about this, is I want to sketch now a recess in the top. Well, the plane that I sketched on is this face here. So if I sketch a recess here on the XY plane, it's going to be in the back. So what I'm going to do to make that my life very easy, I'm going to take that pad and I'm going to go down here and say reversed, and I'm going to say reversed is true. And then when I click away from that, now it's the same pad except for the XY plane is sitting on the top here and that's going downwards. So when I do the next sketch, I'm going to do the XY plane again. I can already see the top of it. I can just pop it straight on that center point again. Come out, and this one's going to be 80 in diameter. So once again, I'm going to do it as a diameter constraint and make that 80. Now, of course, if we wanted to, we could put these dimensions into a spreadsheet, and that would allow us to have those be parametric. We can just change them on the fly. But for this, it's very simple, so I'm not even going to bother doing that. And this is going to be a pocket. And it's going to be a 4 mil pocket because that's how deep I want it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a 4 mil pocket. That basically is my coaster. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to engrave something on this front face. Then I'm going to fill it with epoxy to the top surface. So that's the finished article, and I have actually made some, so I'll show you one at the end, what it actually looks like. But for now, we're going to create a sketch that we can used for engraving. So we're just going to engrave around a sketch. And I'm going to do something very simple. Again, on the XY plane, I'm just going to do one of these, hexagon. Just a bit of an angle just for fun. And a square. And I'm not even going to constrain this other than I'm going to put that square symmetrical. And I might just make those sides equal. So it is truly a square. That's all I'm going to do for that one. So now I have a sketch that is sitting on that XY plane. It's actually above, it's level with this surface, not this surface, because it's on the XY plane. I could offset it if I wanted to, but I'm not going to, because we can tell it the depths when we come to do our pathing. So of course this is going to be made out of a solid piece of wood, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut this depth first. So we're going to cut down to that 4 millimeters deep, and then we're going to engrave this pattern, and then we're going to cut out the outside. So let's see how we do that. First thing we want to do is switch to the path workbench, and once we're switched, we are going to start a new job. Now, one thing I wanted to show you is when I do this, I can only see that solid as an option to add into my job, and not the sketch, which is what I need for engraving. So we're going to change something. I'm going to cancel this. We're going to move this sketch, which is the engraving part. We're going to move that sketch out of that part. So now I dropped it on my folder here, and actually we're going to save this now as that. We're going to save that just so we've saved where we are so far. Somebody did remind me, you got to save regularly with FreeCAD, because now and again it does crash. So does Fusion, so does any of the software packages that you use are this complex. So okay, so I've moved that sketch. I took it from here, dropped it on there, and that now if you look at the alignment of it, it's in line with that part. So now when I create my new job, you see the 2D is showing up, and so is that sketch. So now I can include that sketch and that part in this job. I'm going to make it all one job. So we say OK, and the first thing we want to be able to do is a pocket. And oh, there you go. And so we're going to want to create the pocket. So let's go through, review our job first, make sure everything is the way we want it to be. I'm actually going to tell it to use the existing solid rather than a bounding box. So that's the first thing. And then I want to add some tools. In my library, I have an engraving bit and an end mill. I still have the old tool library in this build. There's a new one coming, but I don't have that yet. So we'll create our tool controllers, say OK. Then I'm going to click on this default tool, and I'm going to remove it just because we don't need it. So I'm just going to remove that for now. And I'm going to fill in here my output file. I'm just going to call it test.gcode. So I'm just going to fill that in for now. And let's see what else. I think that's everything we need to set up. So we're going to say OK. And then I'm going to select this bottom surface, and I'm going to say let's create a pocket. And I'm going to use the 6mm end mill to create that pocket, which is a 1/4 inch for those of you who are using inches. And I'm going to choose a pattern. If I choose zigzag, if I let it choose that zigzag, it won't clean up around the edge. So what you need to do is zigzag offset, and then that will clean up around the edge when it does the zigzagging. I'm going to change my step over to 80. That's 80%. You can do it 100%, but it leaves some lines there. I like 80% because it's just not as much stress on the tool. I've been doing some fairly aggressive ones where I've cut them deeper and 100%, and the tools just don't hold up very long. They're not expensive tools that I'm using, so your mileage may vary. And so this is my safe height and my clearance height. So my clearance height is 5mm. That means if the cutter is 5mm above, it can wrap it. And 3mm above is a safe height. It's not going to hit anything at that height. The way I clamp down my parts, I have clamps that are out to the side. They don't overlap this. They don't come up to this height. They're over the side. And I think there's another video which I'll I'll include right here. I'll do a thing up here somewhere if I can, using YouTube, and I'll put in that video for the clamping system that I use. Okay, so our depths. Now, we definitely don't want it to go into -15, so it should have really gone to that surface. If I click that surface and I click that arrow, you'll see that's -4. That's what we want it to be. And our finish depth, that's the final cut, basically. The final cut is going to be 1 mil. So we want that. And by default, it picks a step down the diameter of your cutter. Well, A, I don't like that, and B, I'm only going 4 mil deep, so I'm going to pick 3 mil. And then, so what we're going to do is we're going to start at depth 0, which is here, and it's going to work its way down to this depth, which is here, and it's going to do that with a 3 mil step down. So it should do 1 step down, cut that surface, and it's going to leave 1 mil for a finished depth, or cut a 1 mil cut and finish up that surface, so we'll get a decent finish on the surface. That's basically it. I can apply that now, and as you can see, there's my cutting paths. So we do have 2 layers there. If I zoom in, maybe you can see them a bit better. The green layers, there's 1 there and 1 there. So those are my 2 cuts. So everything looks the way I would expect it to be, is going around the outside. Now remember, this is the center of the cutter, so it's actually going to cut out to that edge. And we'll say okay to that. And that's our first part of the job done. Now we want to do our engraving. So we're going to choose an engraving job. And we're going to pick our 3 mil engraving 30-degree piece. So it's a pointed piece that we're going to make this with. And we're going to check our heights again. So we got 3 mil and 5 mil, that's correct. And our depths. So our depth here has gone in at 0.1 millimeters. And the start depth has gone in at 0. So what that would do is it would be here, and it would go down 0.1 from there, which would be cutting in midair. So we don't want any of that. So let's open this up. We're going to call this -4. And what that is that surface in there. So it's going to cut into the surface that we just cut out. Now, one thing with these dimensions that you put in here, sometimes they don't update right away. You have to click somewhere else for it to update. So I don't know if you saw that with the 4 mil one, but let's do it with the -6. So I'm going to go in 1.5 mil deep. So I'm going to say -5.5. And when I say OK, you see it's still on 6. But if I click here, then it changes it to the -5.5. And then with my step down, I'm going to make that 1 millimeter. And so that will be 1 millimeter. So we'll have 2 cuts basically for our engraving. And then our base geometry, we need to make sure that it is our sketch that we have in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our sketch, just right there. I'm going to say add, and you can see it says model sketch. Then we're going to apply, and we'll say OK. And if we look closely, we'll be able to see those engraved tool moves. So that looks good. And then we're going to do this outside edge. So we can select the edge. We can say do a circumference. We want to make sure we got our 6 mil cutter in. And this time we're going to check on our height. So again, the 5 and the 3 are perfect. And -15 and 0, that's perfect. Step downs of 3. Now, because we changed the tool, it's actually going to change that to 6 because it will be the dimension of the tool. So we're going to be a little bit careful for that. You see that change when I hit apply? So we're going to change that to 3 because I do actually want it to step down 3. So just be aware that sometimes if you change the tool, it defaults to the tool diameter, which was selected a 3. I changed it to a 6, but it didn't update this step down until I hit the apply. So now I've got it set at 3. And then our base geometry is that face. It's already selected that, and you can already see here are our cuts as we go down the side. So that all looks good. Now, one thing, if you haven't already included it in the tool, is we want to make sure we have our feeds and speeds set up. So for engraving, I normally go at 300 millimeters per minute. And for the vertical feed, so that horizontal feed means that's basically how it's cutting. The vertical feed means how it's dropping down and how many times it's going to drop down. I usually drop down slowly because I don't want it to plunge hard on a point. So I'll drop down at 50. So that will be my feeds. And then my rapids. Now the rapids get calculated in some weird way. So the only way you can change it is you hit this guy. And if I say 8 and say OK and click somewhere else, you see how it comes in at, I'm not even sure what the calculation is it's doing. If I say do 450, which is what I really want it to be, I say 450, it says 450. I click over here, now it says 27,000, not what I want. So I figured out if I say 7 or 8, I get about the right number I want. So that will work. And then the same for the vertical rapid. I found a 3 gets me close to where I want it to be. That's 180. If anybody knows why they come up with those odd numbers, please let me know. I have looked at the setup sheet and modified it there, but even then, the horizontal modified correctly, but the vertical still did some weird calculation. And I'm not sure what is actually going on there, but I sort of did a workaround. If I use those numbers, I come out with more or less what I want. So the same thing on the 6 mil. For the horizontal, for the actual cutting, I want to go at 400. For my vertical, I don't mind going at 100 for that guy. This guy, I'm going to go in and do my 8. And for this guy, I'm going to go in and do my 3. And there you see the numbers look reasonable. So if you don't set those up, you can't get timings for your job. So it won't tell you how long things are going to take for your operations. Now, one thing to note, my operations are the cutting piece in there, the engraving, and then this cutting around here. When I point at these, you can see that arrow shows you the direction in which the cut is going to be made. The operations are actually hiding in here. They're actually they're all grayed out. Not sure of the logic for that, but they are. So here they are, the pocket shape, that's the first one. The engraving, that's the second one. And then the profile, that's the third one. And basically what we're going to do now is we're going to add some additions to that. So for this pocket shape, I want to add a path dress up that is a ramp entry dress up. What that's going to do is it's going to cause it to move as it's coming down. And the idea of that is so I'm not dwelling in one spot, because when you dwell with the cutter and you bring it down, even though these cutters can cut on the bottom, what's going to happen is they move just a little bit. They'll sort of circle a little bit, and they'll cause it to cut a bigger hole than you really wanted. So by using the ramp entry, it'll go ramp down, so it'll be moving in the XY axis as it goes in the Z axis. So it's as simple as just saying ramp entry dress up. I generally just leave the default, so ramp method 3, 60-degree angle. In this particular case, what it's actually going to do is it's going to back up a little bit and cut down at an angle. Now, on the engraving, I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to change the engraving. But for this outside profile, we need 2 things. So we want that ramp entry, but we also want tabs. So again, it's a path dress up, tag dress up. So the tag dress up gives us these little tags. And if I rotate that guy a little bit, you'll see where it's placing them. So I've got 4 in there at the moment, and I think that's plenty. What it's going to do is going to leave a little bit of material there just to hold that guy down. That material is going to be 1.5 millimeters tall. It's going to be 3 millimeters wide, an angle of 45 degrees. I think that's going to look great. So we're going to say okay to that, and we're going to accept that. So now if we look right here, if you see, it's kind of hard to see it, but if you look there, you see that little cut in the toolpath. That will be my tag. I call them tabs, but this refers to them as tabs. Now we want to also apply a ramp entry dress up. So it's as easy as picking the dress up tag, path dress up, ramp entry dress up. And now I have the ramp entry dress up. So if you look here, you can see where it's going to ramp in. So we don't go straight down, we're going to go in at a bit of an angle. And that is basically it. That's all we need to do to make our part. We can do a simulation. I'm just going to do a save before I do that because I think it's a smart move. And we're going to do a simulation. So with the simulation, I can do the whole thing. I'm going to take that one off because it takes a long time. I can do just the engraving. So if I click OK, or start, sorry, you'll see the engraving. One thing with the simulation is it comes in at a very fast speed. So I'm going to just slow it down a good bit. And then I'm going to hit that button again. And it'll restart. And there you can see it is doing the engraving. So the engraving looks good. And then I can switch it up. I can do this guy. You can see how it makes this pocket. It looks like it's making it great. And you can see when it does its zigzag, cuts in, then it does a circular part around there again. So I'm going to run that with the engrave next. So I'm going to do both. So I'm going to take a quick look. I like to look a few times just to make sure it's doing what I expected it to do. If it does anything strange, then you know something ain't quite right. Now this is not perfect either. When it does the simulation, sometimes it actually says here volumetric simulation inaccuracies are inherent. So just so you know. And then finally I'm going to run all three things. So we'll see that they do them in the right order. So it's going to make that pocket first. And then it's going to do the engraving. And then it's going to go to the outside. And so there's obviously a tool change in between. And when it does the outside, it's going to do not only the ramp entry, but it's also doing the tags. And so we'll be able to see a tag here as it comes around. Basically what it does, it lifts up the cutter as it's going around. And I think we're close to being done there. And there are the tags. You can see them in there. So the way it actually cuts them out is it'll cut to here, it'll raise up, come over here, and it'll cut out. So you'll have a radius of the tool on both sides, so it's not exactly accurate the way that that's displaying it. So that being said, everything looks good. Now I can choose to stop, and it will keep this outside, which I don't like to keep them. So you just hit cancel, and it won't keep them. If it does keep them, it puts them down here, and then you can just delete that cut part if you want to. One other thing I want to mention is if I wanted to change the order of these things, what I do, you can't just pull them up from here. So you don't want to just take that one and put it up above the other one. What you do is you go into the job, you go into the work plan, and here they are here. And if you pick on one, you can move it up and down. So you can change the order that things are done. And that's quite easy to do, but you want to do it the right way. Otherwise you can end up in things not working how you expected them to. All right, hopefully that's clear. Obviously your sketch could be anything you wanted to make it, anything that you decided. So if it was some kind of a picture or something else that you've done, you can certainly do that. If you're going to do text, it's a good idea to use the shape string. If you use the shape string, you can do text in it and engrave around the shape string. Okay, so finally, what you do is you click on the job and you hit the export to G code, and we'll find our G code directory. Remember, I already told it was test code. I already had a test code, so I was going to overwrite that. Say yes. Then I always take a quick look at it just to make sure that it looks like what you want it to be. So here you can see my 6mm ramp entry. It's got my speeds already on there. So if those speeds are missing, that means you didn't set the speed on your tool. And then you see the engraving operation, and you can see that in two parts basically. And one thing you can also check is it's going in and doing it at 5 mil deep, then it does it at 5.5 mil deep, so it does that final cut for me. And then it does the ramp entry for the final cut, and that's the final part of it. So my job actually looks good, and then all I need to do is to load that onto my CNC router, and it will cut this job out. And I'll show you some that are finished at the end of this video.
So these are examples of what we made. The ones with parts inside them were cut to 12 millimeters deep, and then the parts put in, and then the epoxy poured on top. So it gives you a real 3D effect. We use some seashells, some fossils, some flowers, all kinds of different things, but you can use your imagination and put whatever you like. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, hit the subscribe button, and look out for more videos. If you hit that little alarm bell, it'll give you an alert when I publish the next video, which should be next week. Thanks.